In the prestigious Regarden Magic Academy, the most valuable trait is magical talent. Here, our protagonist Will studies, but unlike others, he lacks magic. Nevertheless, he dreams of becoming the best in the academy. We see our hero inside the Damas, fighting a huge monster. He comes to the Damas to kill monsters and increase his strength. Being talentless, he fights solely with his sword skills. He strives to prove to everyone that he is the strongest despite his lack of magic. The scene shifts to a lecture inside the prestigious Regarden Academy, where students learn about magic. Professor Edward teaches them some new techniques. Among them is our hero Will, who fails to cast magic, accompanied by his familiar Kiki. Professor Edward calls him to the front of the class, and he feels ashamed because all the students bully him. The teacher Edward called him to try a simple magic exercise in front of all the students, where he was supposed to cast fire magic. However, the poor boy couldn't cast the magic no matter how hard he tried, and the laughter ensued because he couldn't cast even the weakest magic. Even Professor Edward mocked him, saying, "I can't believe a student at our institution is unable to use even the basics of magic. You are truly hopeless." Then, the student Scion cast a magical spell and unleashed a terrifying blue fire, showcasing his power in front of our weak protagonist. The teacher said, "I saw Will struggling, so I decided to help him." But he did so to mock him in front of everyone. Then Professor Edward added, "In this world, the supremacy of magic is absolute. Magic is power in everything. Your talent in magic is what earns you the respect of others," directing his words to Will, saying, "Your lack of talent in magic makes you a fool who doesn't deserve to be in this academy." Will left the lecture feeling extremely dejected. Scion, along with his companions Bart and Marcy, mocked him for only facing weak monsters. Colette, a girl who considers Will a friend, intervened to defend him. Colette, famous for her great magical talent, shocked Scion by defending Will. Nevertheless, Scion continued to laugh at Will, saying, "Becoming a Magia Vander is an impossible dream, and as Professor Edwards said, you should leave this school immediately." Colette tried to lift his spirits, saying, "Professor Edward was wrong to belittle you in front of everyone." Will didn't care about what happened. He was at peace with himself and knew that his inability to use magic was a fact. He told Colette, "I'm lucky that a charming girl like you worries about me," making her blush and yell at him to stop flirting in public. He didn't mean to flirt ever since he was young. He learned to compliment girls. He continued praising her, causing her to blush even more. Embarrassed, Colette pushed him away, realizing she must control her emotions to avoid bringing shame to her noble family. Will forgot about her entirely, his gaze fixated on a towering structure that reached the sky, emanating a massive magical power released by the strongest wizards ever, the Magia Vander. Thousands of magical spells hovered in the sky. Let's understand a bit about the Magia Vander. Long ago, people knew nothing about the sky, living in darkness and fearing the celestial soldiers. 5 wizards rose against them, repelling the invaders and using a seal on the sky, spreading peace across their world. They were granted the title of Magia Vander, which has been passed down from generation to generation, only awarded to the strongest. Everyone dreams of the honor of becoming a wizard, leading to the establishment of magical schools worldwide. Colette asks Will if the guardian known as the Ice Maiden is watching over them today. He confirms this, feeling the guardian's presence from the window above, watching them. This triggers a memory from his past. When he was young, his friend Elfaria told him that the sun and the moon floated in the true sky. She read this from one of the legendary books. She described a beautiful sunset on the other side of the sky, turning everything red and brilliant. She dreamt of reaching the top of the tower, telling Will that if he became a Magia Vander, they could see the beautiful sunset together. Will held on to this promise and vowed to Elvaria that they would fulfill this dream together. Elfaria, with her talent, became the youngest person to earn the title of Magia Vander and left for the top of the tower. She is now the Ice Maiden herself. As for Will, his lack of talent stood as a barrier to his dream. However, he refuses to give up on the promise he made to Elvaria that day, and strives to achieve his dream and earn the title of Magia Vander to stand beside his friend, the Ice Maiden. After his training session, Will was being reprimanded by his teacher, Werkner, for entering Damas without permission again. Werkner was worried that Will might get killed due to his lack of magical abilities. Will apologized and asked about his points. Werkner informed him, "Since you killed one evil guardian, you earned 2 points." Will was overjoyed. His teacher, Werkner, said, "If you want to become a Magia Vander and ascend to the tower, you must first qualify for the higher institution. To do that, you need the spellbook and practical application. You need a vast amount of points from the 3 curricula, and since you cannot use magic, you will never be able to earn spell points." Despite this, Will works hard to increase his points by killing monsters in Damas. Werkner told him, "Progress through practical application alone is impossible, especially for someone who can't use magic." Will felt a bit downcast, so Werkner tries to change the subject to lift his spirits and says to him, "Stop thinking about becoming a Magia Vander when you haven't even graduated yet. Since you failed to earn any points in your recent exam, you need to earn 4 points by the end of the week. He has only 2 days left to collect 4 points. Since he writes everything in his notebook, he starts looking for a 4-point monster but cannot find one. His teacher, Werkner, likes him, so he helps him and secretly tells him that there is a Baskerville monster on the 6th floor, and if he defeats it, he will earn 4 points. He thanks him from the bottom of his heart for this help. However, Sion was eavesdropping on them and heard everything, so he quickly went to defeat the Baskerville monster before Will, as he's jealous of him and wants him to be expelled from the academy. On the 6th floor of Damas, Sion arrives at night to harvest the 4 points, confident of his victory. The poor fellow doesn't know that Sion has beaten him to it. Will relies on his companion Kiki, who has a strong sense of smell, and will quickly find Baskerville. At the same time, Sion and his companions are also there, wanting to defeat the monster to expel the talentless Will from the academy. Mersey is somewhat concerned about the dangers of Damas as they are now on the 6th floor, but Sion is determined to face the monster himself and refuses to retreat. He holds a great grudge against Will for being unable to use magic and dreams of becoming a Magia Vander. He hates him deeply and never wants to see him in the academy again. Suddenly, the monster strikes his companion Bart with such force that he dies pinned to the wall. A terrifying monster appears, and Mersey screams at the top of his lungs. Will hears the scream and quickly runs toward the sound to see what is happening. When he arrives, he finds Sion, the elite student, struggling against this fearsome monster, as his powerful spells have no effect on it at all. This monster is called Evil Shadow, and is worth 10 full points. Will is terrified at the sight of this powerful monster. It is the first time he's encountered a monster worth more than 5 points. He wonders why such a powerful monster is on the 6th floor of Damas. The arrogant Sion struggles against it, and his magic has no effect at all. In this situation, Sion has no chance of survival. Meanwhile, Will watches from a distance, contemplating whether to intervene and help Sion. He remembers that Sion is a despicable person who doesn't deserve help, as he was the one who mocked and bullied him the most in the academy. Therefore, he changes his mind and doesn't want to help him. Suddenly, he recalls what Elfaria told him about being a kind and braver person than anyone else. She also gave him these glasses, so Will moves at an incredible speed and at the last moment manages to save Sion from death. A devastating clash occurs between him and the monster. Will is extremely talented in using the sword. Teacher Edward went to Werkner and informed him that Sion and his group went to Damas without permission, and he wants Werkner to use his companion to search for their location. Werkner asked which floor they went to, and he was told they went to the 6th floor. Here, Werkner refrains from sending his companion and says to Edward, "In that case, there's no need to search for them because Will is there." Werkner uses his magical power to see what is happening in Demas through the magical crystal. Will is fighting the fearsome monster with full intensity, possessing insane speed that even the terrifying monster fails to match. Will actually cut off the monster's finger. Will, the protagonist, is a high-level swordsman. The monster attacks him again with its massive sword, but Will parries and moves perfectly. Then, with his speed, he was behind the monster in a second and stabbed it. Scion is shocked to see Will's true strength and can't believe that this powerful person is the same Will who was bullied. Even Teacher Edward is stunned to see Will with such insane power. Werkner tells him that Will is a rare individual, meaning he possesses extraordinary strength that no magic can match. He has high perception skills and can precisely analyze his enemy's strategies after seeing them just once. Will dodges the monster's attack as if predicting the future. With his incredible strength, he cuts off the monster's entire arm. Despite being talentless in magic, Will is the strongest warrior ever. He took the monster's huge sword, and Scion watched him, amazed by Will's legendary strength. The monster attacks Will with its powerful sword, but Will parries and cuts it in half. His sword strike surpasses lightning itself, proving that Will's protagonist possesses terrifying strength. Thus, he succeeded in defeating a monster worth 10 points in front of the weak Scion who used to bully him. The arrogant Scion felt jealous of him, and even Teacher Edward couldn't believe that someone unable to use magic could outperform his student Scion. Will is actually a kind person. Despite Scion's bullying, he helped and saved him from death. After returning to the academy with the bones of the powerful monster he defeated, he earned 10 full points and won't be expelled from the prestigious Regarden Magical Academy. This is the story of the talentless boy who will turn the world upside down, eager to become a Magia Vander and be by his friend Elfaria's side.
5 years ago, when Will was 10 years old, everyone in the academy used to mock him because he was the only one who couldn't use magic. It was rare for a student at the prestigious Regarden Academy to be devoid of magical talent. All the students thought the school only allowed him to enroll because he was friends with Elfaria, and since Elfaria had become a Magia Vander, they considered getting rid of him and expelling him from the academy. Poor Will suffered from unprecedented bullying and remained lonely within the school walls. Currently, Professor Werkner took Will to the academy's headmistress, Calderon, who gave him this small sword and then attacked him with her powerful magic. It was then that Will's legendary talent with the sword emerged, shocking even the teacher Werkner with his strength. The headmistress allowed him to continue attending the academy despite his lack of magical talent, but Werkner objected to her decision. The headmistress told him that the sword became a magical staff in Will's hand, which was proof of his immense power. Will started to cry, and all he wanted was to become strong enough to climb the tower and reach Elfaria. The headmistress told him, "If you work diligently, it is possible that you might become a Magia Vander, despite your lack of magical talent." From that moment, Will became diligent in his studies. Teacher Meichner explained to them the method of climbing the tower, which involved first reaching the high institution. To become a Magia Vander, one must be recognized by the high institution, and there are 2 ways to achieve this. The first is to create a new type of magic, and the second is to earn no less than 7,000 points in the academy. The second method is considered easier than the first, so the majority of students rely on collecting points. The teacher warned them that they should first think about graduating from the school before thinking about reaching the high institution. As for poor Will, he didn't succeed in either method. He was a failure in magic, which meant he couldn't create new magic or collect points in the academy. He left the class feeling depressed, having failed to earn even a single point from the spell tests. Nonetheless, he didn't lose hope and wanted to double his efforts to become a Magia Vander. While Will was walking with Colette, they encountered a group of students. Mersey told them that Scion had defeated an evil monster, a monster worth 10 points. All the students then believed that Scion was powerful and would soon reach the tower, but in reality, Mersey was lying to them. He had defeated the monster by himself, and Scion had seen it with his own eyes. As Will passed by him, He felt intense anger toward, feeling jealous of him for defeating a strong monster despite his failure in casting spells, wanted to hit him but controlled his temper and left. Will didn't care about him and hid from Colette what had happened between them. At the same time, teacher Edward went to the headmistress and asked her to expel Will immediately, but she refused, saying that Will had worked hard to reach the 6th year and it wouldn't be fair to expel him. Edward insisted on his opinion, saying that the academy needed someone proficient in magic, not a failure like Will, who couldn't even cast the weakest spells. The headmistress showed Edward Will's statistics and proved that he didn't deserve to be expelled. She told him that even if we ignored the fact that he couldn't use magic, he was so outstanding that the word talented was an understatement. Even if he failed to become a Magia Vander, he could still become a craftsman or a healer. But Edward knew that Will's only goal was to become a Magia Vander, and that he wouldn't accept any job other than climbing the tower. Therefore, he considered Will's presence in the academy a waste of time. The headmistress decided that Will would be tested again, but this time the test would be administered by Edward. If Will failed to pass the test, he would be banned from using magic. Since he wasn't allowed to carry his sword at school, he always left it in the locker. After Will went to the study hall and studied the history of magic, he was extremely diligent in his studies and excelled over all the students in writing. He aimed to leverage this to avoid losing even a single point to qualify for the high institution. From the sheer exhaustion of studying, a white hair appeared on his head, and the crazy Colette was excited to remove it for him. But teacher Edward interrupted them and ordered Will to go immediately to the spell room. Indeed, Will went with him, as Edward wanted to get rid of him. Edward immediately used his terrifying magic and told Will, "Your task is to hit me with one attack. If you succeed, I will reward you with 5 points in spells. But if you fail, I will expel you from this academy. A disaster has befallen our hero. Will face Edward, known for his immense power. He attacked swiftly with his magical prowess." Teacher Werkner went to the headmistress, who had summoned him to witness what was happening with his student, Will. He was shocked and seemed like he wanted to intervene, but the headmistress prevented him from stopping Edward's test. She wanted him to acknowledge Will's worthiness to study at the academy and to see for himself if Will was worthy of attempting to become a Magia Vander. But Werkner saw this test as too harsh for Will, since he was facing Edward, who was closest to becoming a Magia Vander, having already reached the top of the tower before him. Edward cast a low-level dark magic spell at Will, who used his incredible speed and tried to strike him from behind. But Edward created a magical shield around himself and hit Will with a tremendous magical force, nearly knocking him out. Poor Will was in deep trouble. It seemed impossible to even touch his terrifying opponent, with no gaps in Edward's defenses, as if he were facing a monster thirsty for his blood. Edward wanted to burn him with black flames, summoning 1,000 spells simultaneously to bombard him with dark magic. Will had no other choice but to flee, but he was trapped amidst a barrage of powerful spells. In this situation, he would lose the test and be expelled from the academy. All Will wished for was to get his sword to fight with. Meanwhile, Colette was worried about Will, knowing Edward's harsh nature and thinking that Will was being whipped. At that moment, Kiki entered, wounded, and pointed to Will's locker, making Colette understand that Will needed his sword. As Will was about to lose, having been severely defeated by the fierce Edward, even when he tried to stand, Edward stepped on his head and mocked him for being talentless in magic, saying, "Give up your foolish ambitions. You'll never become a Magia Vander, you weakling." But Will refused to back down, wanting to reach Magia Vander, and Edward asked him why he insisted, despite his weakness, on climbing the tower. He replied, "I want to be with the one I love. I want to keep the promise I made to Elfaria." This angered Edward even more because Will aimed to become a Magia Vander for his love for Elfaria. Our hero was determined to see the beautiful sunset with Elfaria. At that moment, Colette arrived with his sword. The excitement began, dear viewers, as our hero Will would shine. Edward attacked him with his dark magic, but he cut through it effortlessly with his sword. Edward unleashed all his dark magic in the area, making Will feel afraid as he would burn under a terrifying barrage of 1,000 flames. He was facing the monster, Edward, who had reached the status of a Magia Vander. But this was Will's path to overcome his weakness, and he had to succeed in the test. Will charged towards the magical barrage without fear, and with his incredible speed, he successfully penetrated Edward's dark magic. Then, he leaped into the sky and descended with such force that he broke through the magical shield surrounding his opponent and managed to strike Edward. Thus, Will passed Edward's test and earned 5 points. From the pressure he endured during this test, his head began to steam. The headmistress was pleased with his success. Will, who had failed in magic, succeeded with just his sword in piercing Edward's dark magic. And with this, we reach the end of our episode for today. Continue the clip to more than 500 likes to get the next part as soon as possible, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel in appreciation of my efforts.